So please let's hear out how is the work going in this area and employment area. But first, as we have agreed, we are going to discuss current matters which are no less important. So I would like to start with Ms. Golikova. As we know, until the 1st of October, we pay additional benefits to the medical staff who work with the people infected with the COVID-19. I know that the government looked into this matter, and more than that, Ms. Golikova met representatives of the medics. So I would like to hear out your suggestion, please.
Добрый день, уважаемый Владимир Владимирович.
Hello,
Добрый день,
Mr.
уважаемые
Putin.
коллеги.
Hello,
Позвольте,
dear
Владимир Владимирович,
colleagues.
прежде чем о
Mr.
выплатах,
Putin,
я несколько
before we
слов
talk
скажу о
about the
складывающейся
payments,
эпидситуации в
let
России
me
и в
comment on
отдельных
the
регионах страны.
situation in Russia and some Russian
Первое, что
regions.
хочу сказать, что
First, what I wanted to say
21
is that
сентября
on
число
September
регистрированных
21st,
случаев
the
заболевания новой
number of
коронавирусной инфекции
COVID
возросло
cases
до
reached
8232. Суточный показатель
8,200 a day.
возрос в 1,7 раза,
It's
с 3,1
1.7 times more
раза
than we had before.
100 000
It's now
населения.
at
При этом основной прирост
5.5,
наблюдается по городу
and
Москве.
the highest numbers are in Moscow.
По стране удерживается
So the
на
rate
уровне
of the epidemic in the country is still at 0.5, 0.7%.
увеличилось с 8 до
But
11 количество регионов страны,
there is now 11 regions where the daily number of cases is over 1%. Also, I would like to note that this rate, COVID rate, is 1.9. It means that it's higher compared to what we had 3 weeks ago. And now only 41 regions have this rate below 1. What I would like to point out is that today we've conducted some polls, and it turns out that 85% of all people with COVID state that the main reason why they got sick is because they didn't wear masks and went to large group events. That's why I would like to continue what you said yesterday at the meeting with the State Council. If we don't want to return to the lockdown measures that we had in March and April and in the beginning of May, then we have to make sure that we follow all the recommendations and wear masks, we need to social distance and other safety measures. And this way, we will express our respect to medical workers, healthcare workers who have been on the front lines of this COVID, and they continue to stay on the front lines right now because there are more COVID cases. Free beds for COVID patients were only at 31%. So we're filling beds every day. Also, I would like to say a little bit about the traditional parameters that we're monitoring. First of all, we have lab testing in the Russian Federation, and in September, the number we continue to do more tests in September, and last week we had a meeting with different regions and discussed the situation. And now we have new requirements for October, and we're going to do even more tests in October. And we'll make sure that we give more tests in all Russian regions. We actually have all the resources that we need for that. Of course, it's important because it is a very important prophylactic measure. We can actually diagnose COVID at early stages. And even if we see more numbers, that is still important because this will help us save lives. What's the dynamic of diagnosing COVID today? we compare the number of diagnosed COVID cases to the number of tests. It's at 2.4% now, and in August it was at 1.8%, and on May 11th it was at 7.2%. So we need to make sure that we continue doing what we've been doing and do more testing. As for the symptoms, there haven't been any significant changes here. About 23-25% are asymptomatic. 75-77% are people with some clinical symptoms. Most of them are just like 49% are just common cold symptoms, and 25-27% have pneumonia. As far as grave conditions, they are still, it hasn't changed. They're at 2.6 to 2.7%, but we've seen some growth in more with people that have lighter symptoms, but there's some growth there. As for large groups people, we talked about that. Again, we've seen growth in groups of people over 65 people. The growth rate is 2.6%. So right now it's 21.5%. As for children, this rate is higher by 18.4%, but depending on the region, they're asymptomatic or just very mild symptoms, cold symptoms in children. Of course, schools are a very sensitive issue. Yesterday, our healthcare minister, our education minister, and the head of Rospodrebnadzor had a special meeting with regions. They analyzed the experience of the beginning of the new school year and how schools in different regions dealt with this issue and how they were able to navigate the currents of children. So we changed how schools operate. We recommended teachers using masks when they're not in their classroom, but when they're talking to parents or other teachers and so forth. Also, if there are certain filters at schools and they work, then we will be able to make sure that infections do not get into schools. And we've been doing that in some regions. There are some positive results in Tatarstan. Over 3,000 people were stopped at this so-called filter, and they were able to trace all COVID cases and stop the spread of the disease. And we've been monitoring this closely, and we're asking all regions to make sure that they pay attention and monitor the situation at schools, and that they would implement certain measures if they have to. Also, as we've informed you before, in September, we started studying the spread of COVID-19 in 10 Russian regions as pilot regions. We're talking about studying how it works in schools and universities. In the last 3 weeks, we've seen that most of the positive COVID tests happen at universities, on university campuses. As for schools and school-age children, the spread of COVID-19 is actually not very significant at schools. So I would like to address all our people and my colleagues. You need to take care of your health, and you need to worry about the health of your relatives and make sure that you follow all the recommendations. Now, as for the payments that, as we said, tomorrow we were supposed to stop these special payments to healthcare workers. Today, I met with the health ministry and other important organizations who are working with COVID patients. and also some representatives of regional organizations were also present. It is very important to keep this in mind. First, we discussed not just payments, but also the current situation with the pandemic, with the spread of the COVID-19 virus. And colleagues confirmed that even now they are ready to provide healthcare at the highest level. They have all the equipment, they have all the medications that they need. And when we talked about payments, there was this suggestion. We decided that we would go back to discussing this and would propose a more just system of paying to our healthcare workers, and it will be based on the time that they work, like the actual hours that they work during their shifts. I'm talking about, but this is what I'm talking. The payments that we have today. At hospitals, doctors are supposed to get 80,000, nurses 50,000, and orderlies 25,000. So we need to keep those numbers, but we need to look at the shifts that they actually worked, which means that, for example, a month, a doctor was getting 80,000 rubles, and he worked 21 shifts. Then his average per shift will be. So we basically calculate the average payment per shift, and that's how we will be calculated the monthly paycheck. So if the doctor works more than 21 shifts, then they will be getting more money. As for monitoring the shifts and the number of hours that an employee works during a shift, that's going to be decided by the heads of medical organizations. They will be monitoring and calculating the actual hours that doctors and other medical healthcare professionals work. We think that it is a more calculated and a more just approach to making those COVID-19 payments. And we want to make payments based on that approach until January 2021. And then we will revisit the issue and make necessary adjustments depending on the epidemic situation that we face at that time. So the social payment that I'm talking about, that is based on the actual hours that medical professionals worked. This needs to cover doctors, nurses, and other people working at hospitals, also in clinics, outpatient clinics, as well as those who work in the ambulance service, and that would include the drivers as well. Also, I would like to mention social workers who are also getting these additional social payments. The algorithm is a little bit different there. Social workers and other people in this working in this sphere, their shifts usually lasts 14 days if institution is under quarantine. So we're planning on switching on this new algorithm for social workers and the organization where they work as well. So this is the solution that we're proposing.
I see. Ms. Golikova, regarding the situation that you've described that we have on our hands now in our capital and in the country in general with the COVID-19. So what I would like to say in this regard, of course, masks, the social distancing, and et cetera, and certain restrictions, certain lockdowns, restrictions in schools and work and offices. Of course, people are sick of it, and I understand that perfectly. But as strange as it might seem, people don't always understand this. That's why they don't always believe these things that we have faced, the entire world has faced, Russia included, with this dangerous enemy. All the infections, all the infectious diseases, and COVID among them is a silent but a very dangerous enemy, very dangerous opponent. And quite often people just don't feel it, they don't see it, but we are aware of that. So it is our sacred duty of the professional community, of all the heads of all the levels in the government, to be very cautious, to be very tactful, but at the same time, to be patient and insistent in explaining the actual situation to the people and in suggesting not burdensome but necessary measures and protective equipment. Hopefully that's how we will act. But I mean that for a long time now, we have made a decision about giving a lot of competence in the matters regarding mitigating the COVID spread. We handed them over to the regional level with the support from the federal center, with scientific support, with administrative support, and until now it has been working out fine. Hopefully that's how we will continue working. What we see in Moscow, that there is the highest increase in the number of infected cases, that's not something new. We witnessed the same last spring. But people in the regions seeing this, understanding this, they must be ready to face any possible outcome, any possible developments. As for additional payments to the medical staff, I know that you met the representatives with the doctors and you reported to me about that. And if people really think that what government suggests is more just, and please do that. I have nothing against it. But the payments under these rules that were established and that are still working, so these rules will expire the day after tomorrow. So I guess on the ground, in the regions, in the center, in Moscow, everyone needs to get prepared for this. So I suggest to do the following in the next month, in October, to keep the rules as they are without any changes, and then you could build the work in the way that you agreed with the representatives of the professional community. So let's come from these assumptions. So I instruct the heads of the departments to provide the necessary funds and to work like this.
Okay, Mr. President, and we're going to discuss this mechanism with the colleagues, and we will come up with a solution based on the approaches that they have developed. Thank you.
Thank you. Nevertheless, apart from the COVID matter, we have other problems with the flu, with the cold infection. So I would like to ask Mr. Murashko, a health minister, how is the work going on with the vaccination campaign against flu? So how is the work going with the anti-COVID vaccine? I know that you have an agreement with the Belarusian counterparts, that Belarus agreed to run the clinical trials of our vaccine. So I would like to ask you to say a couple of words about this, so how this work is going on, and what about the shipment of vaccines to the regions, and what are the prospects of increasing these efforts and the creation of alternative vaccine by our other research centers. Good afternoon, Mr. Putin, Mr. Mishustin, your colleagues. As of today, in the Russian Federation, there have been created one of the most state-of-the-art systems of the creation of new biological medicines, including vaccines. So in the state labs, there is the control. The state labs are certified both by Russian and worldwide health organizations. So every batch of vaccine is being monitored. And as for your instruction, Mr. Putin, starting from 1st of June of 2020, we have introduced the system of marking of all the medicines, and each batch, each box of the vaccine has its passport, has its ID that is being uploaded into a common database. And regarding any side effects, if there are some, so we add all this information to the database. So about 10 million of vaccines for children and 24 million vaccines for adults. All the regions of the Russian Federation got them, and the booster shot was already delivered to a lot of people, almost 10 million children among them. And as per the order of the health minister, we apply the booster shot till he's starting from 6 months, and 17% of the population has been getting these vaccines, which is more than if we compare this data with the data from the last year. So the vaccination campaign is more active in comparison with the last year. So we have made the decision about 3 stages of vaccination this year, because the immune system against the current flu. So it takes a certain time to create it, and then it stays for 6-7 months to cover the entire winter and the early spring period. So that's how we need to go with the vaccination campaign. So it's a very efficient approach, and by spreading out this vaccination campaign like that, so we are creating herd immunity for the entire winter and springtime period. And the total amount of the vaccines it will be enough. Can begin mind the regional shipment for the employers. So it will be enough to give booster shots to 60% of the population, which is one of the leading figures in the world. So we have already worked out the production of the vaccines, and the additional funds will be allocated in due time. As for the categories of people this year, we have changed the order issued by the health ministry, and we added their additional categories so that we could cover enough, which is 60% of the population. So we pay special attention to people who work in shifts, so to minimize the risks when they work in some remote areas. As of today, we are not only using a hospital, but also mobile points in large cities, so that access was as wide as possible. And they are also equipped with the databases, so all the information is added to the database, and they have everything that is needed to help their patients to take their blood pressure levels and so on and so forth. On the 28th, Mr. Mishustin signed the decree of the government, and we have introduced the new system to introduce the data about the people who recovered from the disease and who got vaccinated, and it will allow us to assess the quality of the vaccination campaign. As about the vaccination against the COVID, we are in the post-registration phase now. In the Moscow clinics, more than 5,500 people were vaccinated under this process. So everything is going due course. And we were the first in the world to establish a unique system, one-of-a-kind system to monitor patients. So we have introduced a mobile application and the phone call center that is giving calls to the people who got the vaccination, which allow us to assess the complete effect of this medicine. And the first batch of the vaccine, we have sent it to the regions, all the 85 regions. So these are test batches, since it's a new logistic, and this vaccine needs to be stored in sub-zero temperature, and to work out this chain, this logistics, and to train personnel. So we have already done that. And I would also like to mention that the system on monitoring the people who got the vaccine, it will also be added to the joint database of people who got infected and of people who got the vaccine. So then we will have the data on the population about the people who have immunity against the coronavirus infection. As of today, we have started the large-scale production, and the Hungarian company has made the first batch of the vaccine in their factories, so they're under a quality control process now in the state labs. And we plan to scale the production up to, we will use 2 more factories. So in total, there will be 3 factories. We are in talks with 2 additional factories that will join the production, and they will produce the vaccine in their factories. I'll also like to say that we have talked with our counterparts from Belarus, so we have already shipped the vaccine to them. Belarusian counterparts allowed us to run clinical trials as we planned, so we have even done that 1 week before, ahead of the schedule. So we are going to run these clinical trials in the medical institutions of Belarus. As for the registration of other medicines to the preventive measures against the COVID-19, one vaccine by vectors, so they are completing their clinical trials. We have already the documents to assess, to evaluate, and there is additional permission for the clinical trials by the Chumakov Institute, which is the worldly renowned institute. It supplies vaccine to more than 80 countries against the yellow fever, and they also got the permission, and they start clinical trials. So I'm done with my report. Thank you for your attention. And when will they register? We plan to start registering it. Now, the vector vaccine, it should be applied. They have already applied, sent the documents, so they are completing the clinical trials, all the paperwork, and then they will send it for pharmaceutical expertise. So with this in mind, it takes about 3 weeks, the pharmaceutical expertise. And as for the clinical trials by the Chumakov Institute, it will be done after the clinical trials. So 200 people, they will need to put them through this clinical trials, and after that, they'll do that. Then we should establish some kind of media campaign to explain people what is the difference, so who should get what vaccine they should get for which age category. So what vaccines work better with some other ailments and illnesses. So after, of course, they will end registering the vaccine. Thank you. Now I would like to ask Mr. Kravtsov to tell us about how the work is going with the payments for the teachers for being the head of the schools, because we have planned 4 billion, and 21-22 we have 75 billion rubles for this. So how the work is organized, when teacher will get this money, when teachers will get this money, are there any problems regarding that?
Mr. Putin and dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to talk about the success about our school team at the 61st International Math Olympics that took place in St. Petersburg. Our team won 2nd place out of 100 teams, 100 countries. We were ahead of the United States, South Korea, the UK. We have 2 golden medals and 4 silver medals. This is the result of the high professionalism of our teachers. Congratulations to all the teachers and participants.
Микрофон надо включить.
You
Please
need to
turn
turn the
on the
mic
mic.
on.
Сергей Сергеевич.
Извините, Леонидович, ваше
I'm sorry.
поручение по выплатам за классное
So,
руководство
as for payments to homeroom teachers,
сентября
on September 1st,
без сбоев необходимые средства
we've been doing that, and we've been making all necessary payments. All homeroom teachers, that's over 800,000 people, will make these payments in September before the National Teacher Day, which we celebrate on October 5th. We will be monitoring this, as you said, together with our colleagues from the Federation Council and all other agencies. We see what's happening in every school and with every homeroom teacher, and we have a hotline at the ministry so that teachers could report any problems and some additional paperwork that shouldn't be there. As we said, homeroom teachers get separate payments, and that way we protect our teachers and we make sure that the payments that they got before are not going to be smaller and lower. And a little bit about the hot lunches and breakfasts at school. We've made all necessary decisions and we made all contracts in the regions, and all the money has been, all the funds have been allocated to all regions. So all students, grades 1 through 4, get hot lunches every day. We do not get any signals that some students are not getting those hot lunches. It is a large-scale project and it is very important. Ministry workers, they visit schools in regions. There were some problems in North Caucasus in the beginning, but now there are no issues with organizing hot lunches for children. 261 schools, including 483 small schools, first were not on the list of the schools that were supposed to get those hot lunches, but 67%, that's about 1,500 schools. They already removed all the violations that they had, and all the other schools that still have some certain violations, they are on track, and they will remove all these violations on their own. We also have been able to improve school cafeterias, and we modernized over 5,000 school cafeterias and kitchens, and menus are have been discussed by parents, including parents. We get about 50 calls about the quality of the food and everything else. And whenever we get a complaint, we work on that complaint. We make sure that we remove all the problems, and we talk to the parents. So if there are complaints about the quality of food or something else, we address all of them. There are some questions about special lunches for older students, and we always say that we need to make sure that the students that get free lunches, older students that get free lunches, they should also get top quality lunches. Also, speaking for my colleagues, I would like to say thank you to all our helpers, including parents, those who helped regional authorities and federal authorities, and made sure that we did our job well.
I would like to call on the heads of the Rospotrebnadzor about the quality of the free school meals. It should be at all times monitored. And if something is not verified yet, checked yet, inspected yet, it must be completed and it must be kept under constant supervision. And secondly, it has been just said, I agree with that. We can't cut the subsidies, cut the funds that are aimed for meals for the 5th graders and 11th graders from the families with low income, including the families with children who have some disabilities. And I would like to ask representatives of the president in all these regions to take it under their personal control. Sometimes such things happen to solve one goal, to reach one goal. They take funds from such sources that can't be cut in under no circumstances. So I hope that the heads of the regions of the Russian Federation will heed my words and they will get my words right, because all students, all school students must get hot meals. So thank you. Now, yesterday I heard the report about the situation in Voronezh, so 24 hours later. So what is the situation now for this hour in Voronezh and at the Far East, of course, with the fires and with the floods, please? Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Putin, your colleagues. As for the wildfires in the Voronezh and Moscow region, so the fires were put out. The fire destroyed 12 houses, 7 farm buildings, and some woods. We have no victims, no losses of life. So, but the only settlement that was under threat, we managed to protect. And there was a threat in the Far East that the fire would spread to the villages. We managed to protect the settlement against the fire, and all the fires were extinguished. As for the floods at the Far East, as a result of the heavy rains, 289 houses were flooded, 4 socially important sites, 288 parts of the road, and thousands of the, more than 8,000 of the land floods. 56 residential buildings are still flooded, 4,489 plotlands and 98 roads were flooded. We have deployed 2 temporal areas housing and that accommodates people who suffered from the flood, and we are preparing more camps to accommodate for more people. We are also restoring the buildings, and intergovernmental, interdepartmental teams work to assess the damage that was caused by the floods. And I would also like to mention that in 2019, we have started working about the active warning system that allows us to plan the possible natural disasters to prevent them. And using this model in Khabarovsk area, we have increased our personnel to help us to prevent heavier casualties and heavier damage. We pumped out the water from the basements of the houses, so we created special teams with pumps. We have built special walls to protect settlements from the water, and these measures allowed us to save people and to carry on the voting in due time. And it also allowed farmers to save their harvest, to collect their harvest. On 25th of September, at the governmental commission, we have considered measures in Khabarovsk on how to recover the area from the floods. The decision was made to call it an emergency of interregional level, and now the floods at the river is going by the city of Komsomolsk, Namuri, and the water fluctuates at 5 centimeters. Last year, it was 829 centimeters, and this year it's lower, so hopefully there will be no severe damage, and the situation is stabilizing at the moment, so my report is over. Okay, I know that the American personnel are working hard, so I would like to express the gratitude to everyone who works at the Far East in central Russia, fighting with the wildfires, with the floods. And I would like to thank all those who have already completed this work. As we have agreed, in the near future, we will talk about the equipment for the MCOM ministry. Thank you. We have enough reserve. For 4 years, we have a federal project for the comfortable urban areas. So I'm talking with the construction minister now. So what is the situation on this project this year?
Mr. Putin and colleagues, yes, starting in 2017, we started a new city project, creating comfortable conditions. First, it was a priority project, and 2019, it became a federal project as part of the national project called Housing and City. We renovated 60,000 areas in the city. You said that people should express their proposals and their suggestions as to how the areas where they live should be set up. And in 4 years, about 40 million people actually chose these projects for areas where they live, and they also monitored how the works were going. As for allocating funds, in 4 years, 128 billion rubles has been allocated to this project. 102 billion rubles was allocated from the regional and city budgets, and it was also supported by organizations and our citizens. In 2018, we been able to use 98.5% of the funds, meaning that Russian regions think that this project is very important. And one of the most important things is the Russian competition of the best city projects in small towns and historic areas. You initiated and you gave the idea for this competition, and we included this in the federal project. And every year for 3 years, a federal grant has been allocated 5 billion rubles, and 80 winning projects received this grant. Historic towns and historic cities were part of this project. 80 projects are now being realized in Russia's historic areas in smaller towns. And this year, this grant is already at 10 billion rubles, and now 160 projects received it in September. They won this grant. So now we have 400 projects. 92 of them have already been completed. 70 will be completed by the end of this year, and the rest of them will be completed in 2021. The geography for this project has expanded. At first, it was only 43 regions, Russian regions. Now it's 61 regions participating in this program. And the quality is also getting better. Now we have city and regional teams, mostly consisting of younger people who propose top quality projects. So the competition is really high. And we see some serious synergy in these projects, because usually when a project like that is being realized, that gives impetus to other important changes in Russian cities and towns. The infrastructure is starting to develop. Small businesses are growing, like restaurants and other small businesses, because these places become interesting for tourists. And in Russia, we see a lot of interesting projects appearing. Riverside parks, places where people can work out. and people of all ages are involved in this program. So I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but I would want to give some examples of good projects, like the Riverside Park in Orenburg, in Volgograd, Zaraisk in Moscow region. It has been renovated completely, and now there are tourists flooding the city. So we're seeing this infrastructure being built around these projects. And I would like to conclude my report, Mr. Putin, by saying that our people are also now more patriotic and more involved in the things that are being done where they live. They want to participate in these competitions, and they're really sad if they don't win. We have cities that have submitted their projects several years in a row, and finally they won. And that is just a very positive effect, and people are happy. Residents of these places feel better about the places where they live. So it's a very important project, and we're working closely with all Russian regions, and we're monitoring closely what's happening, and we're sure that by the end of the year, by the end of the next year, we will have all projects completed.
You have named all of the cities. There is Tinda, Kaluga, and some other cities where good projects are being implemented. You're right. So what is with the funding for the next year?
As for the funds allocated for the next year, we have all the necessary finances. Of course, we cut it by 10%, but Russian regions are trying to find these funds in their regional budgets, despite the difficulties that they're experiencing. So we're trying to keep the numbers at the level that was projected.
Good. Thank you very much. So now let's switch to the main theme, the mechanisms of the social contract, please. Mr. Putin, your colleagues, the social contract is given to the citizens since 2013, but this type of the social help has become actively used since 2020. One, after the introduction of the federal co-funding by the Labor Ministry, starting from the 2020, the Ministry of Labor with some regions started the test project on supporting citizens, and starting from the year 21, all the regions will get the co-funding. The social contract is the only tool now that doesn't only allow to support the family during these payments, but also to overcome the reasons of the poverty long term. All other means of the social support tied to the any situation like the birth of a child or reaching a certain age, loss of job, temporal or the permanent loss of the employing ability, social contract, that the step-by-step roadmap to get out of the low-income situation for family, because both citizen and the state take certain obligation under the social contract. So the family must get income lower than the living level, and so that the citizen under the social contract can get support and finding job and getting additional training, starting their own business, overcoming difficult living conditions, or starting their own farm. And 2020, at the test project, the region's participants got the funding of about 7 billion rubles. And that this work is most active in the Nizhny Novgorod region, in Mordovia, Chuvashia, Udmurtia, and also in the Belgorod region. And we already see that this system works. I will give you just some few examples from our everyday activities. As family from Arzamas, Nizhny Novgorod region, started their own business, a renovating business. They bought equipment under the social contract, and the father of the family registered as a self-employed person, a single mother from Tatarstan, while she was taking care leave, maternity leave. So she got new training, so she found a new job after her maternity leave ended. In Udmurtia, a family using the funds from the social contract started online school on teaching kids how to read, and the funds of the social contract allowed them to buy the equipment. So it was really well demanded and allowed them to create a unique project and to improve their income. We have already signed more than 70,000 social contracts, but at the same time, there are a number of limitations that we found out that stops from the wider use of this instrument and stop from using it. So under the social contract for the small size companies, they could only get the main funds that were planned to give certain services to the other people, and at the employment, the necessity was going through the internship when the job employer didn't demand any such internship. On August, we introduced first changes to the mechanism of the social contract by the decree of the government. We will expand the list of the goods and of the services of the commodities for the social contract to overcome the difficult living conditions and for starting their own business. For those who start their business using the social contract, we are allowed to allocate the funds to buy the equipment and to pay the rent. And we also expanded the requirements for the families with low income. So we removed the obstacles. We are working on the practical aspects of using the social contract. So we are trying to stay flexible, keeping all this in mind with the colleagues from the regions. We have prepared changes to improve this mechanism starting from the first. We understand that we need, apart from the social support departments, other departments and other agencies, so that we could make the social contract really complex of support. And it's not enough just to help a citizen to start their own business or to find a job. So we must enshrine this mechanism with the job employment centers, with the social support centers, and with the centers to support the medium and small size companies. And after that, the citizen will get the bigger package of support measures, and they will be able to achieve more success under the social contract. Secondly, since the next year, we have a plan to introduce the federal support. Now, the social contract is signed only on 4 out of 5 possible directions regarding the starting your own small farms. At the same time, the practice shows, and a lot of colleagues told us about that, so it is in high demand, this particular sector. This instrument is very important to meet the requirements for the families in the rural areas, to monitor the efficiency of this instrument, to develop people's own farms. We think it must be an obligation that the person must be registered as a self-employed person. Thirdly, we must make regions to stimulate regions to promote this instrument, because starting your own business, starting your own farm proves to be the most efficient and provides the better fast increase in the income. So here are the goals: no less than 30% of the social, 20% of the social contract must help with finding jobs, and no more than 20% for the farms, and the rest is for overcoming difficult living conditions. And within these limits, the regions could define their own priorities, keeping in mind the specific situation in the region. They could put more emphasis on helping with finding jobs, or with starting their businesses or their farms. Fourthly, we need to change the procedure of signing the social contract and to make it more digital. On the social support side, we need to decrease the paperwork and the amount of paper and documents that the citizens must provide, and it may be possible with the development of the social systems, with the social digital systems. And so we will introduce the digital registry for all the social contracts that we sign, and the digital monitoring of their implementation and of all the checkpoints of the social contract. At the next stage, from 2022, we will create one window service after the social contract is signed. It will be used to support the social contract in the next 3 years. To sign the social contract, we have allocated more than 116 billion rubles, about 79 billion will be allocated to the federal budget and 37.5 for the regional budget. And it will allow us to sign more than 1 million social contracts. And as a result of using the social contract from our evaluation, in almost 3 years, almost 400,000 families will be able to improve their income, and thousands of people will be able to start their own businesses and to register as self-employed businessmen. And by our estimation, it will allow them to get additional support from the regions that support the local businessmen. So my report is over. Okay, so you've mentioned working with the regions. I know that without the region, it would have been impossible to do anything at all. So let's hear out now the next speaker about this. How the work is organized. Please, the floor is yours.
Mr. Putin, the social contract as an instrument for supporting people in difficult life circumstances. We've been using it in Udmurtia since 2014, using the budget from our republic. I would like to say a few words about the numbers that we had from 2014 until 2019 and what we have now in 2020. So in 5 years, since 2014 until 2019, we made 788 social contracts. We didn't spend a lot of money. It was about 17 million rubles a year. But we emphasized, since over a third of our people live in rural areas, 97% of all these contracts we focused on people's farms and gardens, and we are monitoring all the contracts that we made, and we're monitoring the families. So 115 families out of 754 have been successfully farming. So 5 years, 788 contracts, and no more than 70 million a year. That's what we could afford, because we were a pilot project in the 21 regions. In 2020, we were part of the National Demography Project, so we had some serious funds. So the regional and the federal funds amount to almost 248 million rubles in 2020. So compare 17 and 248 million rubles. What do we have now? Of course, we continue working, but we now have over 2,000 social contracts signed, and 91% is people with children, including 37% people with families with 3 or more children. 632 people have been employed, and a lot of people have been educated, got education, special education. We're working with 122 industries and companies, and 1,100 people have gotten support in their difficult circumstances. This instrument was very timely in this year, right now, in this pandemic. And we see that people want to start their own business, including farming. So we allocated additional 30 million people from our regional budget. So thousands of families with low income got financial support, and we're also asking you to support this initiative and expand the social contract to cover personal farms and farmland, because people received this very important help, this very important support during the pandemic. But the particular thing about this social contract is that we're giving them a fishing pole where they can fish. We don't give them the fish, but we teach them to fish and give the resources. So there's one family with 5 children in Udmurtia. They live in a private home, and they had some farmland, but they decided to sell the cow because they didn't really have any equipment. We signed a social contract with them. They bought necessary equipment, and now they have a small dairy farm, and they sell their products. They also bought a sewing machine, and the mother and the daughters are also making, are now providing tailoring services, sewing things for the whole village. So it is very important to provide people with necessary resources so that they can start their own business. So that was a very important and relevant measure. So thank you for your support. And I would like to echo the minister and ask for your support for this project in the future. Thank you.
So I would like to use what has just been said. I will explain what I mean now. As a positive example of one of the cases of how the social contract functions, mentioned that one of the participants of this program was registered as a self-employed businessman, and then he repeated a number of times about the importance of being registered as a self-employed. Of course, it is important, but that's not the final goal. The final goal is that people, like in the case that Mr. Prichalov told about this village in Udmurtia, could make money and could buy bread for their families. That's the goal. So please take a look at all the phases, at all the stages, at all the elements of this program, keeping this in mind. We must create conditions for people to be able to work, not just to be able to register. It is of utmost importance. We must not end with that. So if a person registered but he still can't make money, then we haven't achieved any success. I understand there is certain particularities, but we shouldn't be technical about these matters. That's why I wanted to discuss this matter, because that's one of the ways to overcome the difficulties that our economy has faced during the pandemic, since the number of the unemployed has increased by 1.7%. You are well aware of that. And I'm sure that we will overcome this next year. And already this year, we will start working. We have started working, and I'm sure it will bear fruit. I know that the government has planned how to overcome these difficulties, but we must work hard in each segment of this wide and extensive program. So thank you very much. Have a good day.